Welcome, Run Elite. Today, we are talking about cross-training. And we're gonna talk here today about the principles that you can use in your cross-training. Not workouts, specific workouts and prescriptions for paces and things like that. And I'm gonna tell you why I'm not gonna tell you that. But let's talk about the principles here. We're gonna talk about the benefits of cross-training. We're gonna talk about the cons of cross-training. And then I'm gonna give you 2 ways that you can think about this so you know what kind of workout to do and kind of how to govern these workouts. And then we're gonna finish with a couple of keys for you. So the benefits of cross-training. Number 1 is that I'm gonna assume that if you're cross-training here, that it's because you're injured and you wanna keep your fitness up. So that's the assumption that we're making. If you wanna cross-train on top of your running, by all means, go ahead and do it, basically however you like. But if you're injured, then what are the benefits to cross-training? The first one is that you are decreasing the impact on your body. Most running-related injuries are overuse injuries related to the impact of simply hitting the ground when you're running. Not all of them, but that's most of them. So when you do cross-training such as elliptical or biking or pool running or rowing, you don't have impact. So you're gonna preserve impact-related injuries, things like plantar fasciitis or ankle pain, various knee pains, hip pain, back pain, all these things. We're offloading that kind of punch that you get when you touch the ground with your foot, and that shock kind of goes up your body. So that's one of the benefits, decrease impact. Second is that we often, depending on the exercise, will decrease the eccentric load on your muscles. So just a quick review. Let's imagine that my pen here is a dumbbell, and I'm gonna do a dumbbell curl, okay? So this muscle here, in this case the bicep, as I fight gravity, the muscle can contract while getting shorter. Okay, that's a concentric muscle contraction. But if we go the other way, out this way, we're actually not using our tricep. You would think, bicep, tricep. Nope, only if you're fighting gravity. But when you let a weight down slowly, the muscle is contracting while getting longer. And that's an eccentric muscle contraction. Now those are really important because eccentric muscle contractions are oftentimes where injuries start to pop up when we're doing that kind of contraction. Now I want you to think about an elite biker versus an elite runner. Who trains more in terms of just time per day? Well, elite bikers can train 6 or 8 hours a day, every day. And the reason that they can do that, well, they're really fit, of course, let's give them props for that. But one of the reasons is that when you're on a bike, you're doing a concentric muscle contraction. For the most part, you're pushing the pedal down. So your quads, for example, are shortening while tightening. That's a concentric contraction. And so injury risk is very low. And so someone like a cyclist can bike for 6 or 8 hours a day and not have injuries due to eccentric muscle contraction. But when you run, it beats your body up more. Well, because you're hitting the ground with impact, and also because you have an eccentric muscle contraction of your quads and probably your calves, depends on how your foot touches the ground, but for most of you, your calves and your quads. So calves and quads and things associated with them can get beat up. When you cross-train, we take that out of the equation. So if you bike, you're doing a concentric, not eccentric contraction, and that's good for an injury. And if you did something like, let's pick another one, elliptical running. Well, elliptical running, when you touch the ground, there is no ground, right? You start weighting yourself on like an arc. When you're running on the road, it's very clear. You're in the air and then you touch the ground. And you're in the air and then boom, you hit the ground. On the elliptical, you don't hit the ground. You actually start to catch yourself kind of like up before you would touch the ground, and then you weight yourself through an arc in this nice gentle contraction. And so for that reason, you're not getting the impact, and you are getting some eccentric load, but it's just over a more long period of time. And so the injury risk is gonna be lower. Okay, so less impact, less eccentric. And one of the other main benefits is that it's very easy to maintain your cardiovascular fitness. Now, it's not easy to get a new level of cardiovascular fitness. You gotta work hard. You gotta put in more miles, more time, more specificity. So if you've been training for weeks and weeks, then you've reached a level of cardiovascular fitness, and you could just stop. You could take a week off. You will lose neuromuscular fitness, so we'll come back to that. But cardiovascular fitness, it's slow to go away, and it's easy to maintain. So if you get hurt running, you can reduce your volume by a lot, maybe 50%, and you're gonna maintain your cardiovascular fitness. So when you cross-train, you're wanting to just give yourself a stimulus to preserve cardiovascular fitness, not necessarily increase it. That's why a cyclist might have a really good cardiovascular system, even though they've never run, because it's a good stimulus for that, right? So that's the other main benefit. Let's talk about some of the cons. and then we'll break this down into ideas for you. The main con is that you lose specificity of fitness. Let's go back to our friend the biker here. They might have a huge VO2 max and a huge lactate threshold and a lot of cardiovascular fitness and a lot of cardiovascular power with low body weight, and they're really fit for biking. But you take that same biker, you take them off the bike, put them on the road, and have them run a marathon or a 5K, and they're definitely gonna be better than someone who's not a runner, who's not fit at all. But they're not gonna be as good of a runner as those who, like an elite cyclist, and they're elite, right? They're an elite endurance athlete. But put them against elite runners and they're gonna get their butt kicked. That's interesting, right? They have a good cardiovascular system, good heart and lungs, all this stuff. But they don't have the specificity for running. So when you cross train, you lose specificity of running. So what you wanna do ideally is you wanna do a cross training activity that is as similar to whatever your activity is. And for us, it's running. So what's most similar to running? That's a really tough question, but let's try to answer it here. We're gonna go through 5 kinds of exercises that you can do, and we'll talk about the benefits and cons to each one. First one is elliptical. When you get on the elliptical, it's generally a running motion, sort of. But remember, you don't have that impact, you don't have that ground reaction force, you don't have the eccentric load, so it's not running, but it's somewhat close to it. So elliptical running can be very good because it's close to running. But we can also do something like biking. Now, biking is similar to running in a couple of ways. You are extending your knee while extending your hip when you push into the bike pedal. Well, when you run, you're also extending your knee and extending your hip. So it's very similar. That's a good thing. Now you're gonna lose specificity again because of, you should know it by now, the non-eccentric contraction. It's not a running motion, it's biking. It's pretty close though. So biking's a very good one. When it comes to getting your best training in and really peaking for your best race, you have to recover from these bigger workouts, these long runs. Now, nothing is gonna help your recovery more than proper nutrition and proper sleep. The easiest, simplest way is to get a sleep mask. Sleep masks are super useful, but you gotta get a good one. So I've got 4 sleep masks myself, and I found this brand called Manta Sleep, and they're really the best I've ever used. My channel is called Run Elite because I want to give you the best tips to make you as elite as you can be. So if you want to get better sleep, there's a lot of things that you can do, but let's take first steps first and maximize the sleep that you're already getting. And I want you to pick up one of these. Pick up any sleep mask that you like. Skip over all the ones that aren't that good and just get one that's really good, and then you'll have it for the rest of your life. So go to mantasleep.com and then put in code RUNELITE and you'll save 10%. It's pretty awesome. Back to the video. Let's move on to pool running. Now, pool running is a very interesting one because you're actually making almost the exact same motion as running. So you would think that it would be very close to running, but it's actually not, because you're not loading your weight at all when you're in the pool. You are moving your limbs in the same range of motion, but when you're running, when your leg touches the ground, you're putting force into the ground, perpendicular to the ground surface. You're pushing yourself up, you're jumping up, essentially. And in the pool, there's no force that's going that direction. It's the resistance is against your hip flexion, your hip extension, things like this. So it's good cross training for your supporting musculature, like your hip flexors, like your glutes, maybe your hamstrings, and your quads, but you're not weight bearing when you're doing it, and the force that you're putting into the medium around you, instead of being perpendicular to the ground like it is when you're running, it's actually horizontal because you're fighting the water in a horizontal motion. So I used to think that pool running was like the greatest thing that an injured runner could do because it's exactly running. It's not, but it is cross training. One of the benefits is that you can do it for a long time. It feels like you're running. It's got a lot of the same psychology and like feel to it. You can do workouts, VO2 max workouts, etc. Another one is weight training. Now, weight training is not like running hardly at all, but if we do weight training that is supportive of our running, although it's not going to improve your cardiovascular fitness or your specificity in running fitness, it can improve your strength as a runner. Of course, it's strength training. So if you're going to lift weights, it depends on the injury that you might have, but you want to do things that are either supportive of your running or things that have nothing to do with your running, but you want to work out because you just feel like it. Maybe you want to work on getting Arnold Schwarzenegger arms and running doesn't allow you to do that. Well, if you're injured, you actually can work on that. So you work on another goal. But if you want to have your strength training carry over to your running, you want to do something that mimics running. So we want to do a knee extension exercise, a hip extension exercise, such as a squat, a back squat, a front, any kind of squat really. I like the back squat because it takes your center of mass and changes it a little bit over. You have to lean forward a little bit because your center of mass is behind. just like when you're running, and you're working your quads and your glutes and your calves and your feet like you would when you're running. Other things like deadlifts, kettlebell swings. Now, it depends on your injury. If you have runner's knee, which is tendonitis of the patella tendon, you might not want to do heavy squats. So it depends on your injury, but you can lift weights as well. And finally is my favorite one. If you can do this because your injury doesn't prevent you from doing it, I really love the stair climber. Now, the stair climber is so close to running. And in fact, if you're an ultra runner, you should maybe have some stair climbing in your repertoire anyway for power hiking up hills. Imagine that you're in a race and you hit a steep hill. You could run it, but if it's steep enough or if you're tired enough, you might walk or power hike up that hill. Now, that's very similar to power hiking on a stair climber, right? So stair climbing is awesome. You can get your heart rate way up. You can do a cardio workout. You can beat your legs up in a way that you probably wouldn't do when you're running because you're just going uphill the entire time. I really like it. All right, now we're gonna talk about the two categories that you can do. Now, when you go to cross train, let's say that you're actually really hurt and you're not gonna run at all for 3 days, a week, or more, and you're gonna be cross training maybe every day. What I want you to do is consider the following. I want you to focus on 2 areas. The first one is maintaining your cardiovascular fitness. And so if that is the goal of the cross training workout, you want to go relatively long at a relatively low heart rate. It should feel like an easy run, but you can go for a long time. You can go for hours and hours and hours and hours if you want. You can spend all day biking if you want to, preserving cardiovascular fitness. And for that reason, you don't need to look at the distance readout or the power out readout. If you're on an elliptical runner and it tells you your pace, it's all made up, it's all false, because there is no such thing as elliptical running. It's trying to make an equivalent, but it's just kind of a guess. So I don't think that you should bother looking at the distance that the elliptical tells you you're going. You're not moving any distance, you're stationary, and even it doesn't translate to running. So I want you to ignore that computer, and I'd rather you go just off of perceived exertion, because your heart rate might start climbing up and up and up and up if you're trying to maintain a certain pace. What would be an easy pace on the road? You maintain that on the elliptical, it's gonna be hard. Why is it hard? Well, number one, because you don't have that elastic recoil. Remember, you're punching the ground and you're getting some elastic recoil return, like through your Achilles, through your plantar fascia, and that keeps you kind of bouncy when you're running. When you're on the treadmill, it's like running in sand. So it's going to be harder. Second is you're using your muscles in a way that you're not used to using them. You're used to running, but you're not used to the motion that's a little different on the elliptical. So you're unconditioned and it will be harder to maintain a pace. And for those reasons,
I'm out.
Don't worry about the pace. If you try to keep the pace the same as your easy runs, it's gonna be really hard. Don't do it. Back it off. Just ignore it. Just go for time and perceived exertion. So that's the first thing you can do, cardiovascular preservation. And the second thing you can do is hit it really hard. Do high intensity interval training because you have an opportunity here, even if you're in base training. If you're in base training with your running, we don't do HIIT training. We do easy running, we do strides, we do other stuff too, but it's essentially that. We don't do hard intervals, Norwegian 4x4s, tempo runs, we don't do them. But part of the reason we don't do that is because we don't wanna tax your body in those ways when your body's not prepared to. But if you're on a cross-training implement, a bike or an elliptical, you can actually go really hard because you're not going to beat your legs up in the same way running would. Let's say that you're cross-training on a bike. You can really punch it and go super hard and jack your heart rate way up and do an interval, an insanely hard interval. And it's hard cardiovascularly and metabolically, but it's not that hard on your muscles. Your muscles are working, they might be fatigued metabolically, but you're not ripping them, you're not stretching them and ripping them because there's no eccentric contraction. Make sense? So the other thing you can do is hard intervals. And I think that in many cases you probably should. Because if you're gonna ease back on your running, we don't necessarily want to just maintain, let's maintain your cardiovascular fitness. It's an opportunity to work on something that you otherwise neglect. That could be strength training, or it could be hard intensity intervals on the bike, the elliptical, the stair climber, the rower. I really like the rower as well. And when you do that, you can get metabolic adaptations. You can work on things like VO2 max and lactate threshold. You can work on those things without peaking yourself or getting yourself hurt. So it's a really good thing to do. In short, if you were to cross train every day, I would do 1 day of long, easy cardiovascular maintenance, and then 1 day of high intensity interval training, whatever you want. Like really short and really hard, 30 to 60 second like Tabata sprints, you could do that. Or you could work on more traditional things like VO2 max workouts, in which case you'd want to go 90 seconds to 4 minutes, anywhere in that range, and you can do hard intervals that way. and it's really fun. You're gonna actually increase your fitness so that when you come back from your injury, you've actually worked on some things and leveled up some things that were being neglected before. And it could be a blessing in disguise. Now, when you come back, you're gonna be really fit. So finally, let me give you 3 keys to focus on. Number 1 is I want you to ignore heart rate and pace on those cross-training workouts because you're running in sand on the elliptical. It's a different kind of exercise you're not adapted to. Your heart rate's gonna be high, your effort level is gonna be high. Forget about it, just go based off of perceived exertion. Number 2 is I want you to run just subjectively, provided that you're a runner, and all of you are. If you're a cyclist, of course, specificity on the cycle is really important. But for a runner, you wanna be specific to your run, not specific to the cycle. So I don't care what the workout is on the cycle, I care your perceived exertion, how hard you're going, and what we're doing. And number 3 is focus on the fact that even though it might suck if you're injured, you do have an opportunity here. Now, Napoleon Hill said this, with every setback comes with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. It doesn't mean with every setback comes an equivalent advantage. It means it comes the seed of an equivalent advantage, provided that you nurture that seed and allow it to grow. So if you're running less, what can you do? You can work on things that have been neglected, such as strength, in your legs, in your core, in your upper body if you want. You can work on hard intervals, which is an opportunity to work on those when you otherwise wouldn't if you're in base training. Or you can just rest and use that opportunity to spend the time with your family, focus on nutrition, whatever. But it is an opportunity, and that is a really good mindset shift to have. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed talking about cross-training here. If you haven't heard of the Run Ill ebook, it's doing exceptionally well on Amazon right now. Just read the reviews. You're gonna love this. Pick up your copy. You can get it on audio as well. I recorded the audio myself. I hope I did a really good job on that. It's entertaining, it's fun, and it's a cheap way to learn these hacks and more at a deep level so you can improve your race, be it from the 1500 meters to the marathon and beyond to the ultras. This has been Andrew Snow with Run Elite here at beautiful Jump Off Rock in Hendersonville, North Carolina. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you on the next video.